I knew something was wrong the second I saw the program. My daughter's name slashed out in black marker, her cousins printed over it like she never existed. I'm Lauren, 34, and that was the night my own family told me my little girl didn't belong on stage. Tell me, if someone tried to erase your child right in front of you, how would you react? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. The day my daughter got the solo should have been one of those core memories you tuck away and visit when life gets heavy. Instead, it was the day I realized my own family was perfectly willing to snuff out a 9-year-old's joy if it meant keeping their favorite shining brighter. Portland was wrapped in its usual soft gray that afternoon, the kind that makes the streetlights flicker on a little too early. Aubrey walked a half step ahead of me toward the Community Arts Center, her purple hoodie bouncing with every step, fingers gripping the strap of her dance bag so hard her knuckles showed white. "Do you think they've posted the list yet?" she asked, breath puffing in little clouds. "I'd bet on it," I said. "You did great in that audition, remember?" She didn't answer, but her shoulders gave the tiniest hopeful lift. Inside, the lobby smelled like rosin, old wood, and kids' shampoo. Parents hovered near the bulletin board pretending to scroll their phones while they side-eyed the cast list taped up in fresh toner. The air crackled with that particular mix of nerves and caffeine. Aubrey slipped through the tangle of bodies and planted herself in front of the board. For a beat, she was absolutely still. Then her hand flew to her mouth. "Mom," she whispered, not turning around. "Mom, come here." My heart thudded once, hard. I moved closer, dodging a dad with a stroller and a kid dropping goldfish crackers. When I reached her side, she pointed at the center of the page. Spring Recital, featured vocal solo. Aubrey Mitchell. Her name sat there in black and white, simple and unbelievable. "That's me," she breathed. "That's really me." She turned and crashed into me, her small arms wrapping around my waist, face pressed into my jacket. I laughed, the sound breaking in the middle. "Yes, baby, that's you." For a few glorious seconds, the world shrank to just us and that sheet of paper. No cousins, no grandparents, no expectations. Just a child who'd worked hard and earned something that belonged to her. Then the spell broke. From across the lobby, I heard heels clicking too fast on tile. Caroline appeared at my elbow like she'd been summoned, Peyton attached to her side in a glittery sweatshirt from her last competition. Caroline's eyes flicked to the board, then to Aubrey, then to me. Her smile was wide and perfectly practiced. "Oh," she said. "Wow, they picked Aubrey for the solo?" Peyton rose on her toes to look. "But I auditioned," she blurted, frowning. "Ms. Delaney said I was amazing." "You are, sweetheart," Caroline said, smoothing her daughter's hair. "It's just a very bold choice." The pause before bold held more than the word itself. I felt Aubrey stiffen against me. "Congrats," Caroline added, finally turning to us. "I mean, good for her. They must be trying something different this year." Different. Bold. I could hear the subtext loud and clear. So could half the lobby by the looks on a couple of parents' faces. "Or they just picked the best audition," I replied, keeping my tone pleasant. Years of practice. Caroline's smile didn't budge, but her eyes cooled by a degree. "Sure," she said lightly. "We'll see how it plays." On the drive home, Aubrey chattered about costume ideas, set pieces, the exact moment she'd imagined the spotlight hitting her. I nodded and mm-hmmed and forced my jaw to unclench. In the back of my mind, a memory stirred. The taste of dust in an old church auditorium, the feel of a stiff program between my fingers, my own name missing from a list it had been on just days before. "You're better at harmonies anyway," my mother had said back then. "It'll keep things peaceful if we let your sister have the solo. You understand, don't you?" I had understood. That was the problem. At home, Aubrey bolted inside to show her reflection the cast list while I pulled out my phone. The Mitchell family group chat stared back at me, full of old photos of Peyton with medals around her neck and captions about our little star. I typed, "Lauren, Aubrey got the featured solo at the Arts Center recital." I attached a picture of the list, Aubrey grinning in the corner, cheeks flushed with pride. The 3 dots popped up almost immediately. "Mom, oh, that's something. Are you sure it's not just a small part?" I stared at the screen. Another bubble appeared before I could answer. Caroline, solo, like the main one? I typed, "Yes, she auditioned. Ms. Delaney chose her." A longer pause this time. I pictured them in my parents' kitchen, reading my texts out loud like we were the evening's entertainment. Mom called instead of replying. I put her on speaker, partly because my hands were full of Aubrey's abandoned hoodie, mostly because I didn't want to hide anything. "So," Mom began, sugar in her voice, "they gave Aubrey the big role." They did, I said. She earned it. Of course, Mom replied quickly. Of course. I just hope they know what they're doing. Those directors sometimes make interesting choices. Maybe they wanted to give the underdog a chance. Aubrey froze in the doorway. Bunny clutched to her chest. She's not an underdog, I said, more sharply than I meant to. Mom chuckled. Don't be so sensitive, Lauren. I'm just saying, Peyton's been training for years. People expect to see her in those spots. This might be confusing for the audience. The words slid under my skin like ice. Grandma, Aubrey said quietly, stepping closer to the phone. They picked me because I sang good. There was a tiny silence. Then Mom recovered. Hi, honey, she said. I'm sure you did fine. We'll just have to see how it all looks under the lights. After we hung up, Aubrey's eyes were shiny in a way that had nothing to do with excitement. Do they wish Peyton got it instead? She asked. No drama. Just a small, honest question that cracked my heart. They'll come around, I lied, tucking a curl behind her ear. They just weren't expecting it, that's all. That night, after dinner, I found Aubrey in the hallway practicing her entrance. She'd cleared a path between the bedrooms, using the narrow strip of hardwood as a makeshift stage. She counted under her breath, walked to an imaginary center, lifted her chin toward an invisible balcony. From my vantage point in the doorway, I saw her in 2 layers at once. My daughter in her 2 big socks, and the girl I used to be, standing in a different hall in a different house, rehearsing lines for a solo I'd never actually sing. Aubrey caught sight of me and grinned. Do I look like a real soloist? She asked, striking a pose she'd seen in some backstage photo online. You look like someone who belongs exactly where she's standing, I answered. Her grin widened for a moment, then her face settled into something more careful. Even if some people don't think so? She asked, not quite meeting my eyes. The question sat between us like a warning flare. I think so, I said, and I'm the one who matters most in this story. I believed that when I said it. I just didn't know yet how hard my own family would work to prove me wrong. By the second week of rehearsals, the shine had already started to crack. Saturday morning, the multi-purpose room at the Arts Center smelled like sweat, floor polish, and cheap coffee. Kids were stretching on the scuffed floor while parents lined the walls in metal folding chairs, clutching travel mugs and pretending not to eavesdrop. Aubrey, let's take it from your solo entrance, Ms. Delaney called, flipping through her notes. Aubrey nodded, stepping toward the center of the room. She checked her reflection in the mirror, just once, like she was bracing herself, then lifted her shoulders and waited for the track to start. Before the music could even play, Peyton darted in front of her. Wait, I can't see myself, Peyton complained, planting her feet right in the middle. How am I supposed to practice if I don't get the center spot? You're not in this number, Ms. Delaney reminded her, exhaustion bleeding into her voice. Move to the side for now, please. From the parent row, my mother's voice floated across the room. She's just anxious, Janet said to no one and everyone. She's used to being featured. It's a big adjustment. A couple of parents glanced over, then quickly away. Audrey stepped back half a foot, giving Peyton more space than she needed. I watched my daughter's reflection shrink in the mirror, pushed closer to the edge. The track finally started. Aubrey took her first steps, moving through the choreography with that careful focus she had when she wanted something to be perfect. About 8 counts in, Peyton sighed dramatically and flopped down near my mother's feet. This song is so boring, she muttered. It would be better if someone with energy did it. My mother chuckled. Hush, sweetheart, she said softly, but loudly enough. Not everyone is made for the spotlight. Some kids do better in the background. My hands tightened around my coffee cup until the cardboard gave a little. When the run-through ended, Ms. Delaney offered Aubrey a tired smile. Nice job, she said. Just project a little more on that high phrase. Yes, ma'am, Aubrey replied, voice small but steady. As the kids broke for water, I watched Aubrey drift toward the side wall, deliberately avoiding the mirror. She sipped from her bottle like she was just another kid on a break, but I could see it. The way her shoulders rounded in, the way she kept her eyes on the floor. Mrs. Peterson slid into the empty chair beside me. She was one of those parents who always seemed to know everybody's name and everybody's business without making a show of it. You seeing what I'm seeing? She asked quietly. I'm trying to decide if I'm overreacting, I admitted. She snorted softly. You're not. That little one of yours? She earned that solo, and I've watched your family chip away at it from day one. I swallowed. You think so? I know so, she said. I've been around a lot of school politics. This isn't new. It's just uglier when it's aimed at a kid. Before I could answer, Ms. Delaney called for everyone to reset. Break was over. Kids scrambled back into place. Parents resumed their I'm not paying attention faces. They ran the group number this time, the one that closed the show. Peyton made sure to plant herself front and center, elbows out just enough to nudge Aubrey a step farther back. When Ms. Delaney didn't correct it, something hot and sour rose in my throat. Again, the teacher said, from the top. Halfway through the run, Caroline sauntered in, sunglasses still on, carrying a latte she wasn't supposed to have in the rehearsal space. She stood directly beside Ms. Delaney, arms folded, watching like a director. When the music stopped, Caroline leaned over and said, in what she probably thought was a whisper, "Are you really sure about the solo? Peyton's used to leading. The audience expects her. You don't want people wondering why the stronger performer is in the background." "I made my casting decisions based on the auditions," Ms. Delaney replied, stiff. "Aubrey did an excellent job." Caroline laughed lightly like it was a harmless joke. "Of course. I just worry you're setting her up. Some kids don't handle pressure well. She's different." Different. The word again. Always that word. Across the room, Aubrey froze in mid-step, eyes flicking to the adults. She pretended to re-tie her shoe, head bowed, face hidden. Peyton, meanwhile, was already twirling her ponytail and nudging another girl, smirking. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my mother. "Mom, maybe we should talk to the director. This is getting awkward for Peyton." The rehearsal ended with polite applause from the parents' row. Kids spilled out toward the hallway, stuffing snacks into their mouths. Aubrey drifted out last, bunny keychain swinging from her bag. I met her by the water fountain. "How'd it feel?" I asked. She shrugged. "Fine." She didn't look fine. Her eyes were ringed with that shiny brightness that meant tears were sitting just behind them, waiting for a crack. "Ms. Delaney says I need to sing louder," she added. "Maybe she'll give the solo back to Peyton if I mess up." "Hey," I said gently, "that spot is yours. You're allowed to believe that." She nodded, but she didn't answer. She just went back to watching her sneakers. On our way out, I overheard two moms near the door. "It's sweet they gave her a chance," one whispered, "but you can tell she's not the star kid type." "Yeah," the other replied. "You can kind of see who really belongs in the center. It's obvious." I didn't stop walking, but every word landed like a stone. That night, the rain returned, sliding down the living room windows in slow trails. Aubrey sat on the rug with her music binder open, staring at the sheet without really reading it. The television murmured in the background, some home renovation show we weren't really watching. "Mom?" she asked after a long silence. "Yeah, baby?" She twisted the hem of her t-shirt between her fingers. If they change their minds and give the solo to Peyton, is it because I wasn't good enough? Or just not enough? Her voice didn't crack. That somehow made it worse. I set my mug down and moved to sit beside her. "Look at me," I said softly. She did, reluctantly. "There are a lot of unfair people in this world," I said. "Some of them even share your last name. They might try to say it's about talent or what looks right to them. But I've heard you sing. I watched you audition. You were enough the second you opened your mouth." She blinked, trying to hold on. "But what if they don't think so?" she whispered. "Then that says everything about them," I replied, "and nothing about you." She leaned into my side, resting her head on my arm. We stayed like that while the TV droned on and the rain kept falling. From the outside, we probably looked like any mother and daughter winding down at the end of a long day. Inside, I could feel it. The pressure building, the pattern repeating, the same old storm gathering on a new horizon. My family had drawn lines around who they believed deserved the spotlight. They just hadn't realized yet that this time, I wasn't going to stay behind theirs. The night of dress rehearsal felt heavier than it should have. The sky over Portland dipped into a deep blue, the kind that made the streetlights glow like candles. Aubrey sat in the back seat in her rehearsal tights, hands folded too neatly in her lap, her sparkly headband already in place. She kept humming her opening line under her breath, soft, steady, but fragile. "Ready?" I asked as we parked. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the floor mats. "I just want to do good." "You will," I said. "You always do." Inside the auditorium, everything buzzed with pre-show energy, sequins shimmering, parents murmuring in the aisles, the sharp bite of hairspray lingering in the air. Kids in half costumes darted backstage like fireflies. It should have been magical. Instead, something felt off the moment we stepped in. I noticed the programs first. A neat stack sat on a table near the entrance. I picked one up, smoothing the glossy cover with my thumb. Then I flipped to the cast list. My vision snagged on the solo section. Featured vocal solo. Aubrey Mitchell, Peyton Grant. A thick black line gouged across Aubrey's name, hasty, almost angry. Peyton's name sat beneath it in fresh ink, clean and unbothered. For a second, the whole room tilted. Behind me, Aubrey tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, what's it say?" I couldn't answer. My throat closed up. I turned the program around slowly. Her face fell in real time, one soft feature at a time, collapsing like a slow-motion heartbreak. "But that's my part," she whispered. Before I could say anything, a burst of laughter echoed from down the aisle. Caroline and my parents stood near the stage steps, all three looking far too relaxed for the chaos they'd caused. Peyton was already on stage, running through the opening poses of the solo. She was smiling so wide her cheeks could have cracked. No confusion, no hesitation. She knew. She'd known. Aubrey took a shaky step back. I lunged forward and caught her hand before she could disappear into the wings. "We're fixing this," I said. I wasn't sure how, but I meant it. I marched to the foot of the stage, program clenched in my fist. "Ms. Delaney," I called up, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." She looked down at me, guilt carved into every line of her face. "Lauren, I was hoping to pull you aside before you saw that." "Well, I've seen it," I said, lifting the program. "So now you can explain." She exhaled, shoulders slumping. "Caroline has been persistent, and your parents spoke to the board. They were very firm about wanting to protect family harmony. They said Peyton deserved the spot." My heartbeat thudded in my ears. "So you let them pressure you into stealing my daughter's solo?" "It wasn't meant to hurt her," she whispered. "They insisted it was in her best interest." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that made Ms. Delaney flinch. "My daughter's best interest? According to the people who have undermined her from the moment she could walk?" A small sound behind me made me turn. Aubrey stood there, eyes huge, hands clenched in the hem of her shirt. She had heard every word. Before I could reach her, a familiar voice floated from the hallway just beyond the stage-left entrance. Quiet, but pointed. "Well," Janet said, "it's for the best. Girls like Aubrey belong backstage. She'll understand eventually." My stomach dropped. So did Aubrey's expression. She froze. Her breath hitched. The headband she'd placed so carefully on her hair slid off, hitting the floor with a tiny, tragic thud. "Mom," she whispered. Then she turned and ran. I followed her through a maze of curtains and prop racks, calling her name. Kids and parents paused to stare as I rushed past them, but I barely noticed. The backstage felt darker than usual, the heavy curtains swallowing my voice. I finally found her curled beside a stack of folded mats, hugging her knees, trembling. "Aubrey," I said softly, crouching down. She didn't look up. "They think I shouldn't be on stage," she said, voice cracking. "Grandma said girls like me don't belong there." The words hit her like they had weight. They hit me harder. I wanted to undo everything. Every whisper, every smirk, every moment she'd felt small. But all I could do was pull her into my arms. She shook against me like something inside her had splintered. "Why would they do that?" she choked. "Did I do something wrong? Do I not look like the rest of the family?" My breath caught. The question sliced straight through me. "No," I said fiercely. "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. You earned that solo. You deserved it." She leaned back just enough to look at me, eyes swimming. "Then why'd they take it from me?" "Because they're small. Because they're cruel. Because they love control more than they love you." But what I said was, "Because they were wrong." Aubrey swallowed, her throat bobbing. "Are we staying?" I hesitated. I knew the answer. I knew it before she even asked. "No," I said. "We're leaving, right now." She nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. I took her hand, still shaking, and led her out the back door into the cool night air. The hum of rehearsal faded behind us, replaced by the distant sound of rain hitting pavement. As we crossed the parking lot, something hard settled in my chest. Not grief, not shock. Something sharper, something steadier. Resolve. The kind you only find when someone hurts your child and expects you to stay quiet about it. They wanted backstage for my daughter. They had no idea they'd just pushed me to center stage. The drive home felt longer than it was. Aubrey sat in the back seat in silence, still in her rehearsal tights, her costume bag crumpled on the floor like something she'd outgrown. Streetlights slid across her face in broken stripes. Every now and then, I caught a glimpse of her in the rear view, eyes wide and empty. "You okay back there?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. She swallowed. "I did everything right," she whispered. "And they still took it." I gripped the wheel tighter. "You did more than right. What they did says nothing about you." She didn't answer. She just turned her face toward the window and let the rain-streaked glass take whatever tears she had left. Inside the house, the quiet felt too loud. I hung my keys on the hook. Aubrey hovered in the entryway like she wasn't sure she was allowed to move. "Come here," I said gently. She stepped closer. I unzipped her costume, sliding it off her shoulders. The sequins caught the light for a second, then went dull as the fabric pooled over my arm. It looked wrong in our hallway, like a spotlight that had lost its power source. I thought maybe, if I did really good, they'd finally be proud, she said, like they are of Peyton. My throat burned. I am proud, I said. I was proud before the solo. I'll be proud long after this night is over. She nodded, but the words didn't land anywhere I could see. Can I sleep with you? She asked. Just tonight. I don't want to be alone in my room. You don't have to explain that to me, I said. Grab your bunny. A few minutes later, she was curled in my bed, swallowed by too many blankets, bunny tucked under her chin. I sat on the edge of the mattress, smoothing a curl off her forehead. Mom? She murmured, eyes half closed. Yeah, baby? If Grandma thinks I belong backstage, her voice thinned. Does that mean I don't look like I belong to this family? The question cracked straight down my spine. I leaned closer so she could see my face. You belong to me, I said quietly. Completely. No spotlight, no stage, no comment can change that. They don't get to decide where you belong. She held my gaze for a long beat, then finally let her eyes close. Her breathing slowly evened out, still hitching now and then like her body wasn't convinced it could relax. I waited until she was fully asleep before slipping out of the room. In the kitchen, I didn't bother with the big light, just the small lamp by the sink, turning the room into a pool of yellow in a dark house. I set the ruined program on the table and stared at Aubrey's name, that thick black line, Peyton's name below it like a replacement part. My phone buzzed. Mom, you overreacted. We were only trying to help her. Caroline. Leaving rehearsal like that was childish, Lauren. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred, then scrolled past their names and tapped Daniel's. He answered on the first ring. Hey, he said, voice soft. How'd it go? I told him. This time, I didn't soften the edges. I told him about the program, the bolder slash across our daughter's name, the way Peyton was already rehearsing her stolen solo, the way my mother said girls like Aubrey belong backstage like she was doing my child a favor. There was a long pause when I finished. Where is she now? He asked. Asleep in our bed. Did she ask the question? He said quietly. I closed my eyes. Yeah. She asked if she looks like she belongs to this family. His breath caught. When he spoke again, his voice had none of its usual carefulness. Whatever you do next, he said, don't hold back this time. They've been stepping on you your whole life. Now they're stepping on her. You're not being dramatic. You're defending your kid. Something in me snapped into place. Not rage, alignment. You're really with me on this? I asked. All the way, he said. If they're losing anyone tonight, it's not going to be her. It's going to be us walking away from them. After we hung up, I stood at the sink, watching rain thread down the window. Their house was 15 minutes away. I could picture it clearly. Porch light on, TV murmuring, my parents sitting in that same living room where so many small compromises had been dressed up as family harmony. I grabbed my keys again. The drive felt different this time. Not automatic, but deliberate. Every turn felt like a choice. By the time I pulled into their driveway, my hands had stopped shaking. Caroline's SUV was parked in its usual crooked diagonal. The porch light glowed warm and inviting. My stomach didn't lurch the way it used to. I rang the bell. Mom opened the door, expression tight. Lauren, it's late. We were just talking about... I know what you were talking about, I said. I heard enough of it tonight. She stepped aside reluctantly. I walked into the living room. Dad muted the game. Caroline looked up from her phone, eyebrow arched, smirk already forming. So, she said, have we cooled down yet? No, I replied, and that's the point. Dad sighed. If this is about the solo, it's about what you did to my daughter, I cut in. Don't pretend this was a neutral decision. Mom folded her arms. We helped avoid a disaster. Peyton is used to being in front. Aubrey isn't. We saved her from embarrassment. You didn't save her, I said, voice calm but sharp. You embarrassed her. You crossed her name out like she was a mistake. Caroline rolled her eyes. It was a practical call. Peyton carries a show. Everyone knows that. Aubrey can still be in the ensemble. It's not like we shoved her in a closet. I stared at her. You shoved her out of her own moment, and then you told yourselves you were doing her a kindness. Mom's jaw tightened. You're twisting this. We've always wanted what's best for the girls. No, I said. You've always wanted what's best for Peyton. Everyone else is expected to move out of her way. Silence rolled through the room. You didn't see her afterward, I went on. You didn't see her sitting on my bed asking if she even looks like she belongs in this family. She heard you, Mom. Girls like Aubrey belong backstage. For the first time, Mom flinched. I didn't mean it the way it sounded, she said quickly. I meant she might be more comfortable. You meant exactly what you said, I cut in. You meant she doesn't fit your picture of who deserves the spotlight, and you were willing to slice through her confidence so your favorite granddaughter didn't have to feel anything less than adored. Dad shifted. You're making us out to be villains. If the shoe fits, I answered. Caroline huffed. God, Lauren, it's a kids' show. In a year, no one will remember who sang what. She will, I said. That's the difference between you and me. You see a program. I see the night my child learned her own family thinks she should stay unseen. No one spoke. I straightened, suddenly very tired. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You are not going to apologize with excuses. You are not going to spin this as a misunderstanding. You made a cruel choice, and it landed on a 9-year-old's heart. I can't stop you from being who you are, but I can stop you from having access to her. Mom blinked. Are you threatening us? I'm setting a boundary, I said. You stole from my daughter tonight. You will not get another opportunity to do it again. Caroline scoffed. You're really going to blow up the family over a solo? No, I replied. I'm finally acknowledging that you already did. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. I turned toward the door. Lauren, Dad called after me, don't do something you'll regret. I looked back over my shoulder. The only thing I regret, I said, is staying small for as long as I did. Then I walked out into the drizzle, closed the door quietly behind me, and felt, for the first time in a long time, like the ground under my feet actually belonged to me. I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. I lay next to Aubrey, listening to her breathe, steady now but still uneven at the edges, like sleep wasn't convinced it could trust the world again. Around 5 a.m., the sky outside shifted from black to a washed-out slate, and something in me shifted with it. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and padded into the kitchen. The house was silent except for the low hum of the fridge. I opened my laptop, the glow lighting half my face, and typed in the donor portal's address, something I hadn't done in months. The Mitchell Family Fund login sat in the middle of the screen, smug in its simplicity. My mother loved to boast about our family's generous support of the Arts Center. She'd drop it into conversations like crumbs, a trail leading back to her idea of prestige. What she never knew, what none of them ever bothered to check, was that the fund wasn't theirs. It was mine and Daniel's. Every dollar came from us. I typed in the password and the page opened. Recurring donation. Active. Source. Lauren and Daniel Mitchell. Beneficiary. Caroline Mitchell and Peyton Arts Development Program. I stared at Caroline's name sitting there like a parasite. With one click, I canceled every future payment. With another, I added a note. Donation withdrawn due to discriminatory behavior toward my daughter. I hit save. The screen refreshed. Their safety net vanished. It felt like cutting the last string holding up a puppet show. Next came the complaint. I opened a new document and began typing, faster than I expected. The pressured conversations. The whispers about Aubrey's look. The board interference. Caroline's relentless lobbying. And of course, the line that seared itself into my daughter's memory. Girls like Aubrey belong backstage. I attached the program with her name slashed out, the screenshots, the voice memo Mrs. Peterson quietly sent after rehearsal. You weren't imagining it. They pushed for Peyton. Then I sent it to the Arts Center director and CC'd the board. My hands shook, but not from fear, from relief. By 7:15 a.m., I was standing at the kitchen counter with a mug of coffee when the first explosion hit. Caroline, what did you do? Why did my donation get canceled? I typed nothing. Seconds later, Mom. Lauren, this is childish. You're punishing Peyton. Please reconsider. Then Mom again. Mom, we gave so much to that place. They depend on us. I almost laughed. They depend on me, I thought. They never once wondered why the Arts Center always rushed to return our calls. At 8:02 a.m., my phone rang. Arts Center director. I let it buzz twice before answering. Lauren, she said, voice tight, we received your report. We were unaware, truly unaware, of the extent of your family's interference. I stayed silent, letting her fill the space. This is unacceptable, she continued. The board is convening immediately, and I want to personally apologize to you and Aubrey. She heard everything, I said flatly. The whispers, the decisions, the sentence they thought she didn't understand. The director exhaled shakily. We will make this right. At 9:30 a.m., the fallout hit its next stage. Dad, you're destroying Peyton's future over one role. I replied, I'm protecting my child from you. The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then stopped. 5 hours after I hit send, my inbox pinged. From Arts Center Board. Subject, action taken. My heart kicked once. I opened it. Aubrey's solo has been reinstated, effective immediately. Peyton is removed from the number pending review. An internal investigation has been launched. I reread the lines twice, not because I doubted them, but because I wanted to savor them. My phone rang again. This time the director. "We'd like to offer a public acknowledgement at tonight's rehearsal," she said, voice steadier. "Only if you and Aubrey choose to return, of course." I glanced toward the living room. Aubrey was curled on the couch under a knitted blanket, sunlight warming her face, one hand resting on her bunny. She looked peaceful, fragile, strong, all at once. For the first time since this nightmare started, her shoulders weren't hunched. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. "Thank you," I said. "We'll think about it." When I hung up, I leaned against the doorway and watched her sleep. 5 hours. Just 5. 5 hours to pull the curtain back on everything my family had built. Their influence, their showmanship, their practiced image of generosity. It all crumbled the moment the truth entered the light. But as I watched Aubrey rest, her breath even and safe, I knew the real decision still waited for me. Do I take her back into the place that broke her? Or do we walk forward away from all of it? Her blanket rose and fell with each quiet breath. Whatever came next, it would be for her, not for them. 1 year can change a child in ways you don't notice until the light hits them differently. And on that bright spring morning in 2023, as Aubrey stood in the lobby of her new performing arts studio, sunlight spilling across her blue dress, I realized she wasn't the same little girl who once asked if she looked like she belonged in our family. She'd grown, not just taller, not just older, but wider in spirit, steadier in her own skin. Harmony Studio smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh coffee, a combination I'd grown fond of. Parents milled around with iced lattes, chatting about weekend plans. Kids stretched in corners, giggling as their sneakers squeaked against the polished floor. The walls were decorated with photos, smiling faces of every shape, shade, hair texture, and ability. No one child dominated the board. No one voice drowned out the others. It was a mosaic, not a pedestal. Aubrey tugged on my sleeve. "Miss Hart says the audience is bigger today," she said with a grin that used to be rare but had turned wonderfully common. "You nervous?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I feel ready." Ready! The word felt like a small miracle. Through the glass pane of Studio B, I watched her rehearse with Ms. Hart. My daughter stood centered on the hardwood floor, humming her opening notes. Ms. Hart adjusted Aubrey's posture gently, never pushing, never rushing. "Own your space," she said. "It's yours. You don't have to shrink to fit anyone else's comfort." A year ago, Aubrey wouldn't have believed that sentence. Now she nodded like it was simply truth. Daniel arrived mid-rehearsal, holding 2 iced coffees and beaming like he always did when he saw her. "Hey, superstar," he whispered as she stepped out of the studio. She threw her arms around him, blue skirt swishing. "You came early." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he said. When performance time came, the small theater filled with murmurs and shuffling programs. I sat between Daniel and a dad holding a toddler who kept waving at Aubrey through the curtain. The air buzzed with anticipation. No tension, no judgment, just parents rooting for their kids. When Miss Hart stepped on stage to introduce the soloists, her voice was warm and proud. "Next," she said, "please welcome someone who has worked incredibly hard this year, Aubrey Mitchell." The spotlight snapped on. Aubrey stepped into it without hesitation. And there she was, my daughter, standing tall in her powder blue dress, silver clips catching the light like tiny stars in her braids. She looked out over the audience, found me instantly, and smiled. But it wasn't the tentative smile she used to offer, the kind that asked, "Is it okay if I try?" This one said, "Watch me." The music started. Her voice rose, clear and bright, threading through the room as if it had always belonged there. She didn't sound like a child trying to impress anyone. She sounded like a child finally free. Her high note wobbled slightly, but she steadied herself with a breath, and the next line soared. Halfway through the song, she stepped forward, shoulders squared. It was a tiny movement, but it felt like a declaration. "I am here. I deserve to be seen." When she finished, the applause erupted instantly, loud, wholehearted, without hesitation. A few parents even stood. The toddler in the front row clapped so hard his pacifier fell out. Aubrey bowed, crooked, earnest, and hurried off stage. She didn't come straight to me. She ran to Ms. Hart first, who hugged her like she'd just watched a cathedral being built. Then Aubrey rushed down the aisle and nearly toppled into my arms. "I wasn't scared at all," she laughed, cheeks pink. "Not even a little." "I know," I whispered, brushing her cheek. "You looked like the stage couldn't wait for you." Outside, the sky was clear, the kind of blue that feels like a promise. Kids crowded around tables of cupcakes, smearing frosting on their cheeks. Daniel took picture after picture of Aubrey twirling in her dress, her laughter uninhibited and bright. She tugged my hand. "Mom." "Yeah, baby?" "I'm really glad we left that old place," she said softly, but with a confidence that made me breathe deeper. "I don't care anymore if they didn't like me. I like me." Her words hit with the weight of everything we'd walked through, the slashed program, the whispers, the betrayal, but they also carried something new: release. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't even have to check. Caroline. Again. I pulled it out anyway, just to be sure. "Caroline, we need to talk. You can't hold this grudge forever." I clicked the screen off. Aubrey's small hand slipped into mine, warm and steady. "Let's go home," she said. And as we walked toward the car, just us three, sunlight on our backs, nothing chasing us anymore, I realized the truth. Home isn't the place you come from. It's the place where your light isn't dimmed. And for the first time, our home felt bright. Watching Aubrey walk off that stage with real confidence reminded me how powerful it is when a child finally realizes her light never needed anyone's permission. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood, but by the people who choose to protect your heart instead of wounding it. And standing there with her hand in mine, I knew we had chosen the healthier path, even if it meant walking away. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear where you're watching from and what part stayed with you. And if you enjoy stories like this, feel free to leave a like and follow along.